Hello everyone, the STFC fan chat are back for another episode, and this time we are looking at the retained list and what is left of the Swindon Town squad going into the new season. We'll also have a quick discussion on managers linked and other possible names in the hat. I'm pleased to announce that not only with the guys that join me today, but the whole squad that's been involved in the fan chat this season have all been offered new terms ahead of the new season. No one has been released, and we are looking for exciting new signings as well. So if you want to get involved next season, just drop one of us a message and we can sort that out. No prior sort of media training necessary. Just support Swindon Town and have an opinion is all we ask. We're also working on a load of content across the summer. So, if there's anything you want to see from us, again, let us know. But I'm hoping some of the ideas we've got, you'll certainly have an opinion on and be able to call us out for basically being thick and being wrong for whatever we've said this time. Going through the retained list with me, we have Rich is with us. Hello, sir.
Good evening. How are we?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Joe's with us as well.
Yeah, evening, everyone.
And as usual, Adam joins us as well.
Evening.
Good evening, fellas. I hope you are all well, and thank you. The season's over. You thought your feet was up. Your heads are on the beaches, as they say. But as the ruthless manager I am, I dragged you back in for pre-season already. Let's go with the first topic then, and it was the retained list. In one aspect, I don't think anyone was surprised to see so many names on the list. I think there was some shock at one or two of the names, which we'll go through shortly. I also think there was maybe a bit of a surprise that we've actually let go more people than we've actually kept. I think we've actually got a squad of, 8 or 9 officially at the moment. So I look forward to getting your opinions on that. I've split the retained list into a couple of sections. So if we could look at section 1 first, and I'll just read the names of some of the first team players to sort of get your opinion on should we have kept any of them, or was it right that they were all let go? So we had Broadbent, Caddis, Camp, Friars, both the Grants, Hope, Missalou, Palmer. And I've also included in this list Archie Matthews, who was a little bit of a shock purely because we don't actually have a goalkeeper at time of talking. Rich, I'll come to you first. What was your thoughts when you saw the retained list? Was there any of those names you were surprised weren't offered a new deal?
I think there was a couple. I mean, there's a couple that I wasn't exactly too surprised with. One player I'll start with is Zeki Friars, actually, because he hasn't really had much of a look in. And I think he's been sort of one that's not many people have actually talked about, going through Twitter and everything like that. And I just feel as if that he was so injury prone. Even last season in League Two, he never really got going. He was in and out of the team, and then obviously got an injury early. He got a setback earlier on this season as well. So that didn't really surprise me. Anthony Grant, I'd like to say I was surprised to see Anthony Grant being released, but to be quite honest with you, I think it was pretty the way he was treated, and I think that's the way a lot of the players probably felt as well. Whether or not they left on their own discretion or whether or not they were literally just released, but I think a lot of it probably was the way that they were treated. I'd like to think that as well, especially from an Anthony Grant point of view. I think he's given his heart and soul over the last 2 seasons for us. He loves the fans, he loves everything about the club, but it's just the way that the state that we're in. And Archie Matthews as well, just going on to Archie Matthews, I was a bit gutted. He got given the chance against Northampton very late on, and he did well. I thought he did well in that game. I thought he did very well, and that you can see that there's definitely potential in a goalkeeper. And I think just the way that all those players were probably treated, the way that they were just released, says it all about the club, the state of the club that it's in at the moment.
Well, when referencing the state of the club, Joe, I'll bring you in for your thoughts on the first team retained list. But there was the widespread rumour, which it's worth noting, I believe the club have officially denied, that maybe not so much the first team players, but some of the young, like the youth players who were released, weren't even informed prior, and they only found out by the post on Twitter kind of thing. It just sums up what, if it's even remotely true, I should say, it sums up what a shambles that the club has been this year.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of interviews, haven't we, last week as well, about club issues and stuff like that. I think Dion and Tyler Smith. So I think whatever the players say at the moment, you tend to go along with. I saw I think it was the other day, we were voted 91st out of 92 for communication in the Football League. So that sort of sums it up, really. I mean, and for a young, I mean, Anthony Cheshire's obviously a young player trying to make his way. You know, I think for a professional club to not even be able to speak to him on the phone and just say, look, you know, we think you've got a decent future, but we're not in a position to offer you a contract or go somewhere and play football. You need to go somewhere and play football, whatever. Just to give the lad a bit of confidence, and just to sort of dump him and not say anything seems a bit harsh to me, really. I think some of the older lads could probably take that, but I think as a young pro trying to make his way, you know, probably played barely any football this season because there's no reserves. I actually watched him play a couple of games at Wantage when the grounds were open, and you know, he looked all right. I mean, that's obviously a lot lower standard, but obviously him and Massimo Giamatti, or whatever his name is, however you pronounce his name, is, you know, they've obviously not had a lot of chance to play games this year. You know, there's no reserve team, there's no development team as such. So, and they've not been able to go on loan because there's been no teams playing. So, yeah, it's probably been a real tricky situation for the younger lads. Regarding the sort of first team players, I wasn't really surprised about any of it, to be honest. I think the ones I would have kept, bear in mind we're going into League Two, I think League Camp would have been fine. You know, as much as I love Paul Caddis, I think his legs are gone now. I think he's, you know, it's just too much for him. And same as Rich, Anthony Grant, you know, he would have done a job next season, no problem in the centre midfield there. But most of the others, I can't say I was too surprised about, really. I mean, Zeki Friars was one, you know, on his day, he's a really good player, but what's he played 30 games in 2 seasons, if that, probably. You know, we've got too many players with that tendency. You know, Broadbent, that's probably what's cost Broadbent to play a contract, you know, as his fitness record. You know, you say we've got 8 or 9 players left. Well, probably 5 of them have probably only played 10 games this year because they've been injured. You know, Ellis, Baudry, you know, a couple of, I can't think of it off the top of my head now, but Leiden, there you go, there's another one. You know, and so it's all very well saying we've got these players, but we've only got them for 10 or 15 games. You know, you've almost got to sign that many to cover them straight away before you're signing your sort of first team players. So, but I just don't think the club were in any position to offer contracts. You know, obviously Odemeo got one, Twine got one, but that's players that they think they can probably sell a bit quick and make a bit of money before they sell the club, maybe. Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. And I'm actually surprised we kept as many as we did. I guess there was more in contract than I thought. Or people have obviously triggered extensions by playing X amount of games or whatever. So, yeah, I can't say I was surprised. And it's just a recurring theme with this club, and it's just every summer, it's a massive rebuild. You know, even last year when we had a successful season the year before, the team still got ripped up. And this has got to stop. You know, we need a spine of the team that we can keep together for 3, 4, 5 seasons and you know, and rely on them to play 30, 40 games a season.
Adam, I think Joe articulated the situation perfectly, if I'm honest there. Again, to offer you your chance to talk on the retain list, I just want to add in an extra field if I can. Obviously, Garrick, Masterson, Omatoyi, Smith, Thompson all go back to their parent clubs. Should the opportunity arise, would you welcome any of them back next year?
I'm going to probably be quite controversial here. Out of all of them, only Tyler Smith. Although I have got a bit of an attachment to him over the last week because I quite admired his honesty when he came out on that interview with the supporters club. But I just also thought he literally did nothing wrong when he played, really. You know, he had fantastic return on stats, considering where we were in the league. I think, did he finish our top scorer as well?
He was just below Pittman.
Yeah. So, and he didn't play half as many games as Pittman.
Yeah.
And I would have quite liked to see in League Two. I would quite like to see Smith and Pittman maybe up front together, just because I think Pittman will do well next year. I think League Two, as he's getting older, League Two might suit him a bit better. But yeah, I would have quite liked him. The others, Garrick, I didn't see enough of him. That could have been the way that we were playing as opposed to him himself, if that makes sense. Masterson, well, we only saw about 2 games of him, didn't we, before he got injured. On Matoya, I just feel sorry for more than anybody, because I just think that he had that little spat with, I think it was Curran, and then all of a sudden he just pretty much didn't play again. But when he did play in the early stages, he looked like he had a little bit of something. He was a bit pacey. He was a bit. So, but yeah, would I give him a contract? He's probably on decent money at Norwich. He's probably on decent money. So do we want that taken up the wage bill? I don't know. And that kind of, Dominic Thompson, I just felt we ruined him. I just thought we had such a good player there. One of my coaches at Abingdon is a Brentford fan. And when he came over to us, she was like, oh, he's great. He's a really good player. And we were like, after the Ipswich game, oh, yeah, we've got a right gem here. And then it just didn't happen after that. So, again, I probably feel a bit sorry for him. But it's a story of Swindon, as Joe said, isn't it? We'll get all of these loan players. And, that was the problem last year, is we couldn't tie down any of the good loan players we had. And that's why we had such a cut in our squad. Like the Doyles, the Yates and players like that who were just on loan to us. And unfortunately, I think that's been a bit of a repetitive pattern over the past few seasons, really, is not necessarily our retained and released lists. It's been the fact that we can't make any of our loans permanent. But yeah, and I kind of think I share the same. Sorry, I've got the list up with me as well. I know you read it out earlier, Steve, but I think I wasn't overly surprised at some of I was surprised at Grant, but then that could be the fact that just because I think he's such a great player. But then I think of him and I think of Friars and I think of Caddis, maybe even Camp to a certain extent, and Hope would probably take up a lot of that wage bill next year. Obviously, there is the salary cap next year as well. So I don't know. I'm assuming Jules done all of this. I don't know if he's looking at the wage cap next year and saying, look, we've got way too many people on, 3K plus a week. We need to get, and I imagine Joel Grant probably wasn't on a penny either. I think he was on a bit more. He was on quite a fair whack. So, but I agree with Rich. I think Archie Matthews was a big surprise. I don't understand why we seem to have just, even if you look at some of the academy lads that have played for our under-18s this year, it seems like we're cutting the academy in some ways. I think, I mean, we saw obviously Cheshire's from the academy, Jim Matty or whatever his name is from the academy. I don't know who John Johnston is. Is he from the academy as well? He was on the list, but so and then obviously, so I know a couple of players in the academy. Ollie Case, for example, is one of them. And I was quite surprised because I think I'm not just saying that because I coached him when he was a wee lad, but it's he is a good player, and I don't know where our direction is now with what we're doing. Are we becoming a Brentford and cutting all of our academy and just going to have a B team in there? I don't know. I would have liked to have kept Lee Camp. I would have liked to have kept Broadbent, to be honest, and Archie Matthews. But the others I wasn't surprised about. Mistley was a bit of a strange one because I just think what was the point in signing him if we're just going to release him straight away? But yeah, and on the social media front, somebody is lying. It's either the players themselves who have said they haven't been told or the club, because the club website literally states they have been informed that they will not be retained. So when you say informed, sticking my HR day job hat on here, is informed when you've just sent the email to say that they're not playing or you've left a voicemail, or is it informed that you've actually had a conversation with that person? So it's, but we're not talking about the ownership tonight, but I'm not surprised that the likes of Grant, they probably said, look, if you want to stay, you're going to have to take a wage cut. And who's going to take a wage cut in this current environment, even if you are a footballer? So especially if he's probably got his agent already speaking to other clubs who are probably going to offer him the same money that he's on now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. For what it's worth, the ones that I've sort of made a note for myself here, I thought Broadbent would have done a job in League Two, that's for sure. camp if it was possible, but I did note, similar to Grant, his wage was probably too high for us to take with us. Matthews, as I sort of mentioned, I'm really surprised we've let him go, because again, we saw and heard and read that there's definitely a keeper there, and it's just, you know, developing him with a more senior goalkeeper. Missalou, I kind of thought might have been, you know, done a decent job in League Two. So like you said, Adam, I'm surprised we signed him just to let him go. It seemed a bit pointless. And for me, the one I would have liked to have seen Hallam Hope in League Two again, because I do think he would have done very well for us. And I don't imagine, I could be wrong, because obviously we don't have the numbers. I can't imagine he was the highest earner in the squad by any stretch. So I think he definitely would have done a job.
I think Hallam Hope is one of those as well that's just, nobody dislikes him. You know, we know that he comes on, he does a job, and he would have, I agree, he did a job in League Two last year. If you think about when he first joined us, was it he was a January signing, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think, yeah. He scored in his first couple of home games and then didn't start again. It was you know, so it's, and I think when you look at the players that we've offered terms to, I mean, Scott Twine doesn't count because we've had an offer on the table for him since January anyway. And I wouldn't be surprised if we had an offer for Odemayo on the table either. So I suspect the only actual offer we've made is Parsons. So it's probably more with those two. We just haven't withdrawn their offer as opposed to offering them new terms.
Well, if we can, Rich, let's talk about what's left, basically. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to the players. So we've got Baudry, we've got Conroy, Grounds, Hunt, Mandolo, Lydon, Payne, Pittman. And obviously the group chat amongst us, as well as the wider fan base, will be delighted that Curran is also remaining with us, at least in the short term. And as Adam said, Odemayo, Parsons, Twine all have deals on the table. Whether they sign or not, I don't believe there's been any confirmation up until the point of recording. So we're obviously lacking in numbers, Rich. Is there any players there you're surprised haven't gone? And is there any that you're particularly pleased we've managed to say you're contracted, you will be part of the squad?
I mean, to say that I'm surprised that they've stayed, I wouldn't say that I'm surprised, because I sort of knew that they had contracts in place. I think a lot of people were saying that Dion Conroy's was coming to an end, but I always thought that he'd signed a new 2-year deal last January anyway, so when he was injured. So I'm glad. Obviously he had some kind of falling out with John Sheridan, you know, and he never had a pre-season last season. It's not an excuse, but you know, I mean, once you've come back from 2 double ACL injuries, you know, it's going to take time. You're not going to come back overnight. So Conroy would be interesting to see how he does in pre-season. So I'm glad that we have got him, you know, and whoever the new manager will be, hopefully he can do well under him. Frenchie, I think he should just retire, because he's literally made of paper. You know, I think honestly, I could.
He watches these, by the way, Rich.
I could probably count the amount of games on my fingers, the amount he's actually played in the last 2 seasons. He literally get every game that he plays in the first 20 minutes, he gets injured. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm sure he's an absolutely cracking player, but he's had the same.
We've never seen him 100% fit, have we?
Well, this is it, and he had the same issues at MK Dons as well. That's why they released him, and then obviously we signed him, and we signed him on a 2-year deal when we knew he was injury prone. So I'm absolutely shocked that he's still now. Whether or not he continues to play next season, we'll have to wait and see. Who else have we got on that list? I'm glad. Oh, Jordan Lydon and LSE Andelo. Fantastic that they're still here. Both 2 fantastic players. You know, I think they'll both do a job in League Two. So I'm quite glad. Taylor Curran, well, I won't say any more on him. Okay.
Joe, I can't recall. Sorry, if it was yourself or Adam that suggested, but do you think it's Jewel that's made these decisions? Because as we've alluded to, that there is no management in place. The ownership is up in the air. There's not many people left. With Anderson gone as well. There's no one in any sort of senior positions be making these decisions.
No, I mean, you've got to assume it is Paul Jewell. I don't know, maybe Lee Powers stuck his nose in and said, look, I'm still the owner, so I still make decisions around here. And you're all going. I ain't got to pay any of you, so you're all going. I don't know. That's the funny thing, isn't it? There's good players on the list that they're going to be good players in League Two that have been released. And there's, that you would have probably fancied giving at least a year's contract to. And obviously they've decided not to give contracts to anybody. So, yeah, I mean, you assume it's Paul Jewell, but it wouldn't surprise me if Lee Power was in there saying that's it, you're all going, and you're left with what you've got basically.
And obviously, sorry, Adam, carry on.
Sorry, I was just saying, I think it's also important to know the position we're in. We're not going to be terminating contracts either, because it'd just be too costly to do so. So it is a case of your contracts come to an end, we can't afford to keep you. I generally, it feels like there's been no effort towards trying to get anybody to stay on. I genuinely think it's a case of, we can't afford to keep you. You might as well go, because we might not even be a club in September. That's it. I mean, obviously, with the club's great communication, we'll probably find out who's making these decisions in the next couple of weeks, obviously. But yeah, I genuinely think you look at the names on that list, that is every player that is out of contract, pretty much, like with the exception of the youngsters.
Just before I sort of throw it over to Adam, Joe, just if I can come back to you quickly, despite how poor, I think that's the least way I can describe it, how poor we've been this year. Obviously, it depends on the manager that comes in, but it's like Rich alluded to, is there anyone there that you're thinking could really help us make a go of it in League Two, or are you thinking that they're just squad filler because they're contracted and we basically need to bring in everything?
No, look, I mean, Jordan Lydon on his day is going to be the best centre midfielder in League Two, but it's the same issue. How many games can you get out of him? He's got to be managed properly. If you can get 25, 30 games out of him, you've probably got to say that that's a good season. Same with Ellis. I think Ellis is starting to show now that he's got ability there. He's found a couple of positions that he's regularly played in, and he's just been a bit unlucky with a few niggly injuries. The interesting one for me is what happens with Jack Payne. I mean, obviously he's still contracted to the club. If we could keep hold of him, he'd be massive in League Two, absolutely massive. But I mean, I can't see it happening. But if somehow we can get a decent squad together and he feels like he wants to stay, I think that would be an absolute massive sign. And I agree with Adam. I think Brett Pittman will score goals in League Two if he's got good service into him. I think you get 15, 20 goals in League Two. Especially if you just say to him, look, your job is stand in the box and put the ball in the net. Get on the end of the crosses, get on the end of the through balls, stick the ball in the back of the net.
The point you make about Payne is interesting, actually, and is the perfect segue to how I was going to lead the question for Adam. With the likes of Payne, and then you've got the likes, again, Twine, or I can't even do it, Odemayo. Is that we're saying these players have been retained, offered contracts. Is the belief that, yes, they're here, but they will still go in the window?
Yeah, I think with Scott Twine, yes. It pains me to say it because I genuinely believe Twine wants to stay. However, I think it's going to be completely out of his hands. I think if the right money comes in, it's going to be difficult for a new owner to come in. Twine's put himself well, especially with the last game of the season. He's put himself well in the transfer window. Odemayo, I maybe not. Odemayo might be just one of those that we're just trying to make sure we've got a young defender who's, well, I'm not going to say who's not Taylor Curran, but because I swear Taylor Curran's like 45 now, isn't he, near the end of his 10-year deal. But it's, yeah, I think, and Harry Parsons is probably, because again, even if you look at we recruiting over the summer, if Pittman gets injured, who's the striker? So it's it's even because we do what Swindon probably always do, and we'll end up signing players on the last week of the window. who are probably not very well, who might not be that good. And we would have already played 4 games or whatever. So it's I think Twine is obviously, we already knew the contract's on the table. So for us, for a new owner, it's probably just a bit of a moneymaker. Hopefully not, because I genuinely believe Twine will do stuff for us. He could be the kind of figurine like Nathan Thompson in some ways, where he's just always at Swindon until it's literally too hard for him to push further. But yeah, hopefully not.
If we can briefly move on to the topic of next Swindon manager, please, gents. There's been a couple of names that I've seen thrown about. I've also looked. There was a fairly interesting piece done in the Adver on a couple of names, which I've noted down here to get your opinions on. Also looked through the ever reliable sack race to see who's sort of being linked with either, in the betting for our job, or being linked with teams around where we will be. So they're likely to be in the mix. I'll throw a few of the names out there. Let's start with the ones that we know have been linked. So Wellings will always be linked, I think, but we believe he's going to Doncaster first and foremost. Fowler's name come up, which I don't know if you agree. I think that was just like a media stunt more than anything. I don't think there's anything genuinely in that. I know Rich has a particularly strong view on that one and whether he wants Fowler or not. So we'll let him have his say on that one in a second. Cooper's name has come up again. Would anyone want him back if the option was there? Tisdale's name always gets linked when our job's available. Ricketts obviously has Swindon previous on his CV. Now he's got a little bit of manager experience. Apparently Peacock said he doesn't want it yet because he's still got more learning to do before he takes on a job like that. But do we think that's just him distancing himself until a takeover is complete, and then all of a sudden he'll come in as the saviour potentially? A name or two names that have been linked in the past, Alan Archibald, I've seen his name being linked around League Two clubs again. Parkinson's name's always dotted around for jobs in the EFL. Derek McInnes is a name that's being dotted around a lot at the minute. And finally, Sol Campbell is a name being dotted around.
Woody's face when he said that.
Yeah,
fair five for that is a pretty depressing list.
Saw it. Rich, I'll let you go first. Any of those names inspire you, or any that you definitely do not want?
Controversially, I'm going to say, and a lot of people, I've said this in the past as well, about Mark Cooper. I mean, obviously, his second season, was it his second season or his third? Was it his first season that he got us into the playoffs, wasn't it? And then his second season, and then we took the dip, didn't we? If he had the right owner, I would like to see Mark Cooper. I've never had anything bad to say really about Mark Cooper. I just think, I think he's a half decent manager. I think he'd probably get us promoted back to League One. I know he hasn't really had the financial backing at Forest Green really. Or I don't know what's happened, but he's managed
better than Swindon managers.
Wow, true. That's a fair point. He's managed to get them into the playoffs consistently the last couple of seasons as well. He's just not followed through with it and got them actually promoted. I'm trying to think of some of the other names that you said on there. Sam Ricketts, obviously he started off in League One. Could he do a job in League Two? Don't know. But do you know what? Those two names that I said are far better than any of the other names that you said on that list. Like Tisdale, like seriously. I mean, I know Bristol weren't in a very good position, but certainly not. And Robbie Fowler. Well, Robbie Fowler, let's put it this way. He's not exactly had the biggest name of managerial appointments in his managerial career so far. So I don't personally, now look, listen, obviously you've got examples like Paolo Di Canio first came in, and he did what he did, etc. But like Robbie Fowler, man, I just don't think he's got really the personality to be a manager. Now I could be wrong on that, but I just can't. I don't see him as a manager. I don't see him trying to push us to get back promoted to where we need to be. Do you know what I mean? I don't see it. I just don't see it.
Joe, how about you? Is there any names on that list that would inspire you?
No.
In which case, if that's the case, which is fine, because it's an honest opinion, who would inspire you that you think is available?
I've always been in one of these. I think either a young manager or a player manager. Somebody. If we could get somebody, I mean, it's not going to happen in a million years, but somebody like James Milner would be perfect as a first managerial job. It's not going to happen in a million years, but even somebody that's 35, 36 playing in the championship. I've always been a fan of Swindon. Have always done well when they've had young managers, or always seem to do well with young managers. And it's just younger, fresher ideas, isn't it? I think a lot of these guys now, we've done the Sheridan, we've done, we've had all these experienced managers, Phil Brown, etc., and it's been crap every time.
You know what, Jeff? Like I was just going to say, I mean, because obviously these young managers, they've just recently stopped playing, so they know what the game is like. When they've got an old manager, like old tactics playing in the 90s, it just doesn't work anymore. So you're absolutely right. I mean,
you've only got to look at Mourinho now, haven't you, at Spurs?
Exactly.
10 years ago, everyone's saying the bloke's the best coach in the world, best coach ever. Now he's been sacked every 12 months.
Exactly.
The game's changed now, and I think. You said Phil Parkinson on your list. That would be exactly that sort of problem. It's too old school.
Well, on the note of younger managers, and it is just a sidestep, but I do wonder all of your opinion on this. I did see a tweet, I think it was yesterday, and it was, they'll have to forgive me, I can't remember who it was now, and I will find it and I will retweet it out. There was a tweet yesterday. What former Swindon player still playing now do people think would make a good manager one day? And I saw Charlie Austin's name.
Charlie Austin, yeah.
He actually replied himself as well and said one day. Do people, I'm not saying now, but do you guys think he would make a good manager one day?
It'd be controversial.
Yeah.
It'd certainly be controversial. Yeah, I think he probably could. I don't see why he couldn't be. He's got the passion as well. We've seen that in several interviews that he's had. The one that sticks to mind was the one where he had a disallowed goal against Southampton, or was it he was playing for Southampton? Sorry.
Did that one stick in your mind particularly because someone dubbed one of your rants on here in exactly the same way as his Park Clyde one, but you wouldn't let anyone share it?
Very good.
What about you, Joe? Do you think Charlie would make a good manager one day?
Was that me?
Yeah.
Sorry. I can't say I really know enough about him to say whether he would or not. Really, I mean, I think when he was at Swindon, he was a bit of a Jack the Lad and whatever, but obviously he's a bit older and a bit wiser now. You'd hope so. Who knows? But I got nothing bad to say about the bloke. He obviously, when he plays, he gives everything. He tries his hardest, and But I wouldn't like to comment really. I don't know enough about him as a person as whether he'd be the right sort of character or not.
Adam, he's obviously doing a bit of media work as well as he gets into the twilight years of his career. So if we're looking at other ex-Swindon players who are also doing their bit in the media, could Simon Ferry come in as assistant manager? And got all sorts of options there. What do you reckon? Would Charlie make a good manager one day?
Would he make a good manager? I think it's difficult nowadays because you don't know how to be a good manager. Almost relies on what club you're going into, not just because you look at I know he's old school, but really, when Mourinho was appointed at Tottenham, you would think he's got money, he should do a job there regardless, and he didn't. But going back to Charlie Austin, I mean, he's got his hunger for coaching school, so he's obviously already got coaching in his mind. I know he gets down. I can't remember if I was with you at that game, Rich, when we went to watch a Hungerford game.
Yeah, he was there. Yeah,
and he was there, and he is quite engaging in local football. So one thing that I would say, he might be a good manager, but I don't think he would be the type that would go in straight to professional. I think he would start from the bottom and make his way up. A bit like what's his face, the one who used to play for us as a youngster, now in non-league, Boreham Wood.
Luke Gerrard.
Yeah, a bit like him, kind of like start at the bottom, maybe even somewhere like Hungerford where he's got a lot of connections there. I don't want to name drop, but my partner knows Bianca, Charlie's wife, quite well, and I know he's got a good business head on him, to be fair to him. So he would probably go in and understand how things work in there. I think he has probably got the right roll your sleeves up attitude to be a manager. But whether I would want him straight at Swindon, probably not. I would like to see him start nearer the bottom in a National League side and make his way through. So definitely not as next, even as his first job in Swindon. I wouldn't want that. I think although there's a lot of fans that are on the fence about him when he left, etc. For me, he was still one of the best strikers we've seen. So I wouldn't want that to be ruined by him coming in and having a bad managerial start by taking us. In terms of the names you rallied off earlier, I forgot some of them already. That's how much they stuck in my mind. The usuals, Tisdale, definitely not. I actually had a look at the links to the Leyton Orient job because I thought maybe that's probably where we're looking in terms of the same kind of category as them. And I know that Kenny Jackett's the favourite for them. Now, interestingly, although I agree with Joe, I'd like to see a young manager come in, possibly somebody who's played the professional, like the top end of the game, who's not Charlie Austin, but has already got that wise head on him, like a Milner figure. But interestingly, if we are looking at the more experienced, somebody in a Kenny Jackett fold probably wouldn't be a bad shout for League Two. I don't think I liked Cooper, even though he wasn't really much of a plan B person, but I did like Cooper because he was very good with the fans. Although he didn't seem it up front, he did a lot behind the scenes with fans, and I did quite like that about him. Sorry?
And the youth as well.
Yeah, exactly. And but I'm not one, as we said before, I'm not one for going back on old managers. I think that they've had their time here now. And I'm not saying they wouldn't do a job. Richie Wellens would do a job if he came back. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, he's probably going to be announced as Doncaster manager tomorrow. But I think we just, if we're going to have a new owner, or even if we don't, but if we are going to have a new owner, let's just start again. Let's just have somebody come in fresh, who's maybe somebody's not been linked with us before. Somebody who's coming in with completely fresh mind, has no real history with Swindon whatsoever. Or we go at the complete opposite and just appoint a fan, because obviously 7,000 people know more than John Sheridan. So
I think we could all do a job, to be honest with you, Woody.
Exactly. I'll take it for the salary I'm on now. But yeah, there's all sorts. I mean, like the Leyton Orient stuff. You've got the guy up at Motherwell as well, who was up at Motherwell, Robinson, Neil Ardley, all those type of managers. We got to remember though that League Two, for an established manager who's got a success under his belt already, is not a hard division. If you've got money behind you, if we've got a new owner, we're going to have money behind us. We know that already. So really, it's going to be another kind of, which I don't want it to be, it could be another Di Canio year where we just chuck a load of money at the team to get us out of League Two. But we need that sustainability that Lee Power promised when he came in and never gave us. But we need that sustainability that we're going to be a force to reckon with in League One as well. But it would be nice to have a manager who is just going to do that all the way through. I'm not saying that managers shouldn't chase their dreams, but we shouldn't be losing managers down a division for a start. As that was one of the catastrophes with Wellens. is the fact that he's got, I know he's closer to his own, but he's gone down a division. Except that shouldn't be happening in football. No, as a player, you aim to make your way up the same way you do as a manager. So I agree with Joe. If we can get somebody in who's fresh faced to the scene, that'd be great. However, if we get somebody who is a little bit more experienced, I'm not going to rule it out. They'll probably get half the people in the world shouting back at me, but I wouldn't say no to someone like Kenny Jackett coming in and looking after us next season.
But I can ask one final question, chaps, before we do finish, and it's just linked to that point Adam's made about starting afresh. If I can sort of turn that on its head, no matter who the new manager is, and I hope it's quite a simple question, do you hope the likes of Peacock and Mildenhall stay on? Rich?
Peacock, I want him to stay with the academy. He's got a great relationship, great build there. Hopefully he can bring the next generation of under 16s through. Because from what I've heard, there's so much talent there, and even going down the age groups as well. So I hope Peacock does stay there, and I think he will. Mildenhall, I think Mildenhall, I think he's fantastic. I think he's always been dedicated to us. And I think, he's not really put anything wrong, really. He's always been there, even through the crap with Sheridan and Wright. I'd love to get his views on what they were like now, but I know he'd never do it. But that would be interesting to hear what the relationship was between them all, because, I think Mildenhall could probably get on with any manager. And I'm sure he did try with Sheridan and Wright. But, I think whoever comes in, I think from what I've heard about Mildenhall, I think he's an absolute class guy. He's done so well with the goalkeepers that he has brought in. And let's face it, we've had a lot of them this season. So with whoever he's had to bring in, he's always pulled something out of them. And, and he's always tried to progress them. So, yeah, I'd like to keep Mildenhall on and Peacock to stay in the youth.
Joe?
I think you'd imagine Lee Peacock would go in Phil Allen McLaughlin's shoes, wouldn't you? I'd have thought. As that sort of academy director, manager, whatever you want to call him. And I think, as much as I said a minute ago that we need a fresh manager with fresh ideas, I think in the backroom staff you need people that are connected to the club. They've got a passion for our club. Steve Milden, all right, he left when he was 21, but he's a Swindon Town fan. He's the same as us three. He's a Swindon Town fan. He wants the club to do well. And you need people like that in the background, and between the communication between players, managers, you need those people in the middle that care. And I think both of them should be staying, and I'd like to hopefully sort of find somebody else that could come back and do a bit of coaching as well. This sort of well liked at Swindon or has got an affinity with the club. I think that's an important part of coaching teams and management teams. I don't know what the other two guys think. They probably know more than I do, but that's my view on it.
Adam?
Well, obviously I love Lee Peacock, so I want him to stay. But Lee Peacock, I agree. I think he'll go into Macca's role, and it's the right role for him. Peacock's passion is so big for the club as well, which I think he will be manager one day. He will be manager one day. But I quite liked the fact that he said, "Look, I don't feel I'm ready yet." That's basically what he said, and I quite like that because that shows that he's like, well, I do care about the club, but I don't want to be at the forefront of it and take this poison chalice on and then, end up doing everything wrong. But also, I think he's probably already been, rest in peace at Macca, but I think he's probably already been told, you're going to have that role. Mildenhall, if I'm honest with you, I'm not a goalkeeper coach, but when we were allowed to watch, I used to go early just to watch Mildenhall warm up the keepers, just because I just admire his enthusiasm into the goalkeepers. I know goalkeepers, you've got to try and get them hyped up for a game, a bit like an American footballer in some ways, but it's I liked it. And when Sheridan was in control, Mildenhall quietened down quite a lot, and I didn't like that. I don't know why. There was I just always feel that Mildenhall's that really noisy assistant, noisy coach that always says the right things anyway, so you don't shut him up. It's
even under Wellens last season, it was mainly Milton doing a lot of the coaching.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think under Sheridan, even Wright to a certain extent, they all just went like that and just felt it, it was a bit of a bully culture, I guess. But yeah, I'd like to see them both stay. And as Joe said, the backroom staff, you do need people that are, that are connected to the club in one way or another, because very rarely you never see the headlines say the backroom staff have all left. Is always the manager has left and taken his backroom staff with him. So yeah, we do need somebody who's it'd be good to bring in. I can't even think of anybody. It's the same as Joe, but it's it'd be good to have maybe another person involved. Maka was a prime example of that, an absolute legend in the shirt. And
there's only one other guy I thought of the other day, and that was as a fitness coach would be Gerald Eiffel.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that.
And Eiffel stayed around as well, didn't he? Because he went to Highworth, he went to Swindon Supermarine.
He's still living in Swindon now.
Yeah, exactly. And he played in that Loaf Strangers thing the other day as well. I've got no qualms with the backroom staff, unlike the manager, where I don't always feel that it's the right thing to have somebody so connected to the club. But a backroom staff, yeah, fill it with legends if you have to. It's but yeah, definitely keep Mildenhall, and I genuinely do hope that Peacock takes the academy role, if we still have an academy. I genuinely hope he takes it, because I think he's got the drive that our youngsters and the passion that our youngsters need to see.
I think we've just today seen a prime example of what a well-rounded, well-liked, well-respected coach can do. I don't know if you guys saw it, but in the Liverpool game earlier today, Alisson bizarrely scored the winner. Dramatic goalkeeper header. But at the end, there was a clip of the Liverpool goalkeeper coach, and we all know the story of what Alisson's had this last 12 months, etc. But the Liverpool goalkeeper coach was there. They were embracing together. They were smiling, and that's exactly the feel I get. But you guys are a lot more qualified to talk about what you see in that than I am. But when you look at, like Adam said, the enthusiasm Mildenhall has, I could see that would be what he would do normally. He would be the one embracing the players, and having that connection with them. So
exactly, they call it Goalkeepers Union for a reason. I've got the same, even at the lower levels of women's football with my lot. My goalkeeping coach, she protects those goalkeepers like there's no tomorrow. And it's a very unique position. Rich knows he plays there, so it's a very unique position that they kind of need to be catered for and looked after, if you like. And I think Mildenhall does that. And I can't remember his name, but the guy at Liverpool does the same. It's important, because especially when you think that you've got a first team keeper and then a keeper who's probably not going to play that season. That's normally the setup when it comes to goalkeeping. Normally, not with Swindon. You could be 7 keepers and you'd all get a game. But yeah, it's normally the case. So it's really hard to keep those type of players motivated. Whereas with an outfield player, there's a chance that Matey Boy's going to be injured in the next 3 games, so you're going to get a call up. Whereas you don't really get that with goalkeepers.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. Listen, gents, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you for your time. And to anyone who does watch, please let us know, was there anyone you were surprised got released that you would have liked to keep? Was there anyone we kept that you're surprised wasn't released? And none of the guys here seemed enthused by any of the linked manager names. So can you tell us, who would you like to see in charge of Swindon Town next year? We will be back probably in the week with a little review of what's gone on in court. Once we get some details of that, I'm sure there'll be a few of us have an opinion. And then, like I said at the start, we've got a few things planned for across the summer to hopefully keep fans engaged, because we appreciate all the feedback we've had and the response we've had since we started doing it. And next year we're looking to make it a much more regular thing for you. So thanks for watching, gents. Thanks for your time, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.